remains committed to creating platforms like this, spaces where we gain practical, evidence-based strategies that strengthen leadership, that enhance staff performance, and ultimately support student success. We're especially privileged today to learn from two highly respected professionals that Mrs. Gemini will go on. We thank them for sharing their expertise with us. And to every educator joining us, both from Aisen and without, we say your presence is a powerful. It shows that you are committed not only to excellence, but to growth, to well-being, and to the future of education. Therefore, this evening, I encourage you to listen with openness, reflect with honesty, and receive the insights that will empower you to lead and serve even more effectively. And so, therefore, on behalf of ASEN, I warmly welcome you to the 2026 ASEN Speaker Series. Thank you, and I wish us all a truly enriching session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Carrolley, for your very warm welcome. And before I introduce our first speaker, I want to kindly ask that everyone on the platform should kindly introduce themselves in the chat room, tell us where you're joining from, and tell us where you work. Thank you. So this evening, our first speaker is Mrs. Folashade Omola Adefisayo. She's a principal consultant and CEO of Leading Learning Limited. She founded her education consulting firm in 2014 with nearly 40 years of diverse professional experience. She specializes in teacher training, leadership development, and school transformation for clients ranging from public and private schools to governmental and non-governmental organizations. Transitioning from banking to education, she served as Executive Director and CEO of Coronal Schools Trust Council from 2002 to 2010. She thereafter voluntarily served as a Director of Coronal Secondary School at Barra from 2010 to 2014, followed by various roles in school management. In 2011, she decided to further her education and embarked on the postgraduate studies in education at the University of Nottingham, where she graduated with distinctions, both the diploma and master's level. Recognized for her contributions, she received the Merit Award from the Federal Republic of Nigeria. During her tenure as the Honorable Commissioner for Education in Lagos State, from 2019 to 2023, during the Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu first tenure, Mrs. Folashade spearheaded initiatives to enhance the educational landscape in Lagos State. Passionate about education activism, Mrs. Folashade volunteers extensively to address the learning crisis in Nigerian schools, collaborating with various government entities and NGOs, including the Federal Nigerian Society for the Blind, Volunteer Corps, Junior Achievement, Faith Foundation, YEDI, Tech for Nigeria, OWA Foundation, and the SWRT, amongst others. Without relenting, Mrs. Folashade Adefisayo currently serves on various boards of organizations in and outside of Nigeria. This includes serving as the current chairman of the Atlantic Hall School Board, chairman of All College Board, a member of the Federal Nigerian Society for the Blind Board, founding member of Teach for Nigeria, a member of the African Leadership Academy Johannesburg Board, and a member of the Princeton in Africa Advisory Board. She's also a member of WIMBY's board, amongst others. Ms. Folashade Adefisayo, we are honored to have you here this evening, and we look forward to the wonderful session and insight you're going to give us this evening. Welcome, and we give the stage to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I hope you can hear me. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's very good to be here. I'm so glad to be. I think Aisen is a very important institution to me. I think I'm an honorary member also. So I'm glad. So I'm home and glad to be among all of you great educationists, because you're busy, you're even on break or something and tired, but still you want to grow and learn. I off my heart. I appreciate your you know your passion for this our noble profession. I just have a small correction in the citation. I don't know who always puts it there. I'm not a member of WIMBIS board. I'm just a life member of WIMBIS. Thank you. So I'm supposed to talk about emotional well-being and productivity. I had to sit down and really think through this, because this is a topic that resonates so deeply among all of us now, especially nowadays where you hear all sorts of things like, it's stopping my mental health and so on, things we never used to hear before. I remember someone talking about my dad and saying, so you will say in my father's house, you have mental health issues. By the time he deals you with one dirty slap or the other, I think the mental health issue will fly out through your head. But were thinking that was a totally wrong way of handling something so important that traumatizes people for life. And so I'm glad that you've asked me to come and talk about this. And I think there's somebody to change my slides. I wish I could change my slides myself, but since I can't, can somebody please move to the next slide? I want to make it more conversational, and I hope that you will be putting things in the chat box. But I'd like to talk first about emotions. What's emotion? What are emotions? Why do they exist? And then we'll go on to emotional well-being. But when we say you are you are emotionally in a good place. What does it look like? And I'd like to talk a little bit about emotional intelligence, because one of the tools by which you can manage your emotional well-being is by that very great study by David Goleman on emotional intelligence. I'll try and talk about the role of the individual teacher. How do you manage yourself, regulate your passions, and then the school, how do you support your staff? Because it's important that we support our staff. I may get to the children, but I think that by the time we have managed ourselves, then we'll be able to manage the children. The children is a huge topic on its own, so I didn't want to delve too deeply into it. I wanted to talk about the individual teacher and the school as well. What can you do to support your staff, to support the whole environment, so that the whole ecosystem of the school is one that is not toxic, is one that is, a positive, emotionally balanced environment. And of course, I'll talk about stress, because stress is one of the major problems, what major factors that causes a breakdown in emotional well-being. What it is, it's not bad to be stressed at times, but it shouldn't be sustained. It shouldn't be all the time. It shouldn't be too much. It shouldn't be unbearable. And so when stress comes, how do you manage it? Because this is one of the ways by which people actually break down. So if I can have the next slide, and let's talk about emotions. This is, like I said, is a timely paper. It's even important, because at this point, for all of us in this field nowadays, we are navigating so much. There's academic pressure. The children have to do well. I remember dealing with a parent who told me that she does a lot of work with her daughter, supporting her. The child must be first in class. She must be top of the class in every subject. That the work she has done is too much for that girl not to be top in class. And everybody too is trying. So they put a lot of pressure on the teachers. There's the curriculum itself, which is the Nigerian curriculum, as you know, is so deep. And then we have in some of our schools, children are doing Nigerian curriculum, IGCSE, studying for SAT, doing all sorts of exams. So the children themselves are under a lot of pressure. So there is a lot of pressure on us. There are regulatory demands. Ministry is asking this and that of you. I mean, I was one of them before, so I understand. And then there's increasingly complex student needs. The students in your class. In the old days, your teacher came, when I was in school, your teacher came, taught, and left. What is her business with your emotional well-being? Nothing. Yeah, nothing to do with her. But we can see the result of that, because when people say the old days are better, I always say, no, I feel we were severely traumatized without understanding that we were traumatized, and it affects us even up till old age, So we are under immense pressure. And right now, how are we measuring our productivity? That is what we are doing well. How we measure it with results, exam scores, inspection, university admissions, and where are alumni, enrollment, financial. All these are all good because they are what you call this is what you call data. Let me remember that word. That is a substantive. It's actual data collected. It's not sentiments and so on. It's quantitative data, yes. But what if our most powerful tool is actually the most invisible? And that is emotional well-being. Because when most of the people in school have, are emotionally balanced, emotionally happy, and so on, emotionally comfortable, it translates into all these measures of productivity. The academic pressure does not is manageable. The parental expectations, you have strategies for managing them. Regulatory demands, you have your strategies as well for managing all the pressures that come about you, and you're able to manage them well enough. Now, I don't want to do all the talking. If I can have the next slide, I do want you to do a bit of talking as well. So let's talk about our emotions. What are they? Your emotions rise spontaneously rather than through conscious effort. And it's affected by your feelings. It affects your feelings. It affects your biology, that is your physiology, and it shows in your expression. First of all, maybe you're angry at someone, very angry, feel angry. Then there's the physiology of it all. You have a headache. You flush. You're clenching your fist. You are getting annoyed, grinding your teeth. You want to fight. And it shows on your face, the expression. So they are very important. And why emotions are important. It's good for us to have emotions, express our emotions, and so on, because it's part of how human beings have survived this long. Because there's something called fight or flight, and our emotions help us fight. If we find ourselves in dangerous situations, it helps us measure the accuracy of that situation and to make our way out of it. It helps us to manage relationships and all the things that hit us on a daily basis in our lives. So it's important, really, that yes, we should have emotions. So I have the next slide. Thank you. It's quite important. Now, I want to ask some of us our initial thoughts. Can you put a few emotions that we feel in school? A few emotions that you feel almost every day in school in the chat box. I'd be pleased. Thank you. Am I seeing anything? Good. 15 new. Fantastic. Am I seeing anything? Frustration. You are frustrated. And the participant put it in capitals, meaning that, and this is just so much. Emotions we feel in our different schools. No NEPA. No NEPA is not an emotion. It's a reality of the situation around you. Happiness. Oh, I'm so happy. Somebody put a positive one. Yes. Happiness. Sometimes you are very happy. Contentment. Frustration. Not enough time. Fatigue. Yeah, that's a sadness. Smiles. Smiles is the expression of something inside you, of an emotion. Frustration, that keeps coming up. So clearly, this is something that comes up a lot in schools. Excitement, yes. Sometimes you are very excited. You are doing good things. There's adrenaline pumping. You are very happy with yourself. There's excitement. There's confusion as well. And there's this one that says excitement, happy, sad, happiness, being intimated. I don't understand. Intimated either by parents, boss, or peoples. I don't know. I disliked boarding school in particular and was constantly anxious. Yeah, I drew a map of my life. I was asked by because I'm attending a course, and my teacher said, draw the ups and downs of your life. You know, one of the downs was my boarding house, where I was quite unhappy. So anxiety, uncertainty, transferred aggression, and so on. There's so much that there's so many emotions. I remember for all this, there's the biological reaction, there's the feeling that it elicits, and then there's the expression on your face. Shakespeare said you cannot tell the mind's construction from the face, but usually you cannot control your emotions very well. So if thank you very much. I really appreciate all your comments. It's quite great. Exhaustion, very good. Pride. Pride can be good. I'm proud of my students who are doing well. Fulfillment, great. Thank you. So if I can have the next one, envy, jealousy. In fact, that's another one. You can imagine envy. The person is passing by, your head is. If I can have yes, next slide, please. Yes. Can you convey? Let's name them the top one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at the bottom. What's the top left conveying? What do you think she's showing on her face? By her face. Okay, tell me what you think. And then number 2, the lady in the middle on top. What is she showing? That's the expression on your face. You can see. And then let's try the bottom right. It's the same woman, the same photograph, but look at the different expressions. Look at the different expressions because of the emotion that this person is feeling. So you should know that your emotions are very difficult to manage. You cannot say, when you are happy, somehow you can't help it. It will show on your face. When you are angry, somehow it shows on your face. One of my children, I'm always teasing her that from behind, I can know you are happy. You are angry. The way you hunch your back, the way you look tight and everything. So that before you turn, by the time you turn around and I see your face, I know that there's trouble on the, on the mountain. So, yeah, somebody said, one of the expressions is difficult to place. Yes, I think the top on the left is a bit bland. You can't tell. Is she happy? Probably not. Is she sad? Not very. It's just and it's very difficult to place. I agree with you. There's somebody who's awestruck. Something is happening. This is, awestruck. It doesn't mean you are happy about it or unhappy. Surprise number 2, indifference displayed in emotions. Very good. So let's look at the next slide. I have a few answers there. Top, left, right, neutral. Yes, very difficult to place, like we said. Then there's surprise in the middle, which somebody described as being awed. And then the one on top is right. He's very happy. Bottom, there is fear. In the middle, there's sadness. And on the right, there's anger. It's the same person, but you can see how it just changes her face, especially the 2 that change most are happiness and anger. And that's why they tell you that you use so many muscles, because your face in happiness looks like your neutral face, or just you haven't used too many muscles. But look at the anger. You have used so many muscles, so that even in the aging process, if you get angry too often, you are going to age faster than people who don't get that angry always. So let's go on to, thank you. First of all, let me thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm enjoying your comments. It's making it worthwhile for me. Thank you. Next slide. So we've seen that emotions, you really can't control them. So why are we talking about emotional well-being? Well, emotional health or emotional well-being is how you think and feel, because though you can't help it, but you must acknowledge it and cope with both positive and negative emotions. In life, the 2 will come your way. There is nobody who can guarantee you that you will be forever happy. If people are telling you that, don't believe them. It's not going to happen. Life itself is full of ups and downs. The way I take life is that if it's up, that's good. Take it. If it's down, take it as well. Take the learning from it. What I always tell my children is take both. If you're happy, take it. If you're unhappy, take it, and just make the best of the situation. So your emotional well-being refers to how well you are able to accept and manage your emotions and cope with the challenges throughout life, because there will be challenges throughout life. It can affect how well you function on a day-to-day basis. Because if you are unable to cope, you break down, you shut down. You won't be able to do the things you're supposed to do. And if it's difficult, and difficulties in your well-being will have a negative impact on your mental and physical health, and ultimately productivity. Ultimately, because when you shut down, you can't answer again. You are so overwhelmed and so unhappy, so frustrated. You are going to shut down. When you shut down, a lot of problems come. Then your productivity at work will decline. You too will know that this is happening to you. I can have the next. So what is emotional well-being? I say it again. It is how well people are managing their natural emotions that must happen. Remember, the well-being is how do you regulate it? So we're going to talk a little bit about how you regulate your emotions. There's something called psychological safety. And as teachers, we've got to help our students with psychological safety. Psychological safety means they feel comfortable in your presence to talk, to say their opinions, and even school leaders. Because like I said, I look at it from the point of view of a school leader. Imagine if your school is a psychologically safe place where a teacher can have a dissenting view and not, I will show you, Then there's also resilience under pressure, that when there's pressure, you are still strong. You're still able to stand up and come up again for air. And there must be a sense of meaning and sustainable energy. That is what emotional well-being is. You are somebody who regulates your emotions. You're somebody who is psychologically safe, who is in a psychologically safe place. You are resilient. No matter what is happening, you bounce back again. You will recover. You make a sense of meaning. At a point, I was going to say, what is the meaning of, I had a small formula that one of the greatest formulas, and I didn't put it in this presentation, but when I'm talking about emotional well-being, I always talk about three things: your self as a person, your competence, your confidence in yourself as a teacher. I've always said I don't know any job that is better than that of a teacher. As the daughter of two teachers, it was a great privilege to be the daughter of two teachers. A great privilege to be a member of that profession. So, I think I'll say, and so three things. Yes, your profession, your competence, your ability. The second thing is your emotional regulation. And the third thing I always talk about here is meaning. That is your life meaningful? Is it making sense to you, what you are doing in life? As a teacher, I think it should make sense to you. It makes sense to you later when you start to see your students. I think 2 or 3 days ago, 2 or 3 of my students called me. They are not grown, no, they are about 27, 28. I was, do they want to marry? Because one of them told me she's getting married. So, and 2 boys now called me and said, is she marrying one of these boys? But no, they just wanted to come and see me. And they just wanted to come and see me. And they were like, Mr. Desayo, yeah, you are looking older, you are gray now and so on. Just to see me. And my joy was inexplicable. So it showed me that the work I have done has meaning. What you are doing has meaning because you are changing lives. Remember what the chairperson of Aisen said, you are nurturing the future. There's nothing greater than that. So if you as a teacher, so I'll say it again, and like I said, I didn't put it in my slides. There are 3 things that I want you to look at as a teacher. Number 1 is your profession. Am I a professional? Am I sure of myself? The parent comes to me and starts telling me all sorts of things. Will I be able to say, no, professionally, this is what is acceptable? So first of all, you've got to be sure of yourself. The second thing is you've got to manage your emotions, and that's what I'm going to focus my attention on. And the third thing is you've got to make meaning. You've got to be sure about the meaning of your life. So please don't let us forget these 3 things: your competence, your emotional regulation, and so on. So that is what emotional well-being is. It is not the absence of stress. You must be stressed. It is part of, when you are stressed, that's when sometimes you turn in your best work. It's not permanent happiness. There's no such thing as permanent happiness. Somebody who is permanently happy probably has serious mental health issues. Because even at times, just watching TV will break you unhappy. Now, what is happening in the world? It is not reduced accountability. That is, emotional well-being is not reduced accountability. You must be accountable for who you are, what you've done, what you are doing. So don't forget what it is. What it is. Remember what it is. Your regulation of yourself, your safety, your resilience under pressure, your sense of meaning. and your energy, because you're able to sustain your energy, because emotional well-being dampens one's energy. Can I have the next slide? Thank you. If I can have the next slide, please. And then why is it important? I mean, you said it in a number of ways. It affects how people function and carry out their daily jobs. It affects your productivity on the job. It affects how you handle stressful situations. And in school, we do handle stressful situations. You wake up in the morning, something happens. I remember years ago looking out through my window, they were just planted some flowers, and there was a little boy jumping on, killing the flowers. I ran across the field. I held, what's the matter with you? I talked to him. Oh, my. It was not right what he was doing, but his mother was dying. And he was an only child, born after many years. So the mother was in her late 50s, and she had a little boy of about 11 or 12 while she was dying. And the boy was so troubled that she would die before he comes home from midterm. Because every time he went away on holidays and saw her, she couldn't even come for visiting because she was dying, and she did die. It was very, very emotional. I was so sorry. And of course, that, of course, immediately made me shift my behavior to the boy, got close to me, and to support him. I called the father, what is happening? So we helped the boy, support the boy through it all. But it shows you that individuals, the stressful situations are very difficult to manage. But if you're emotionally balanced, you will be able to manage it. You'll be able to manage. Some situations are very bad, but if it's not too bad, you can manage it. It can affect relationships, because then you are in a state of mind where you don't want to talk to anybody, you don't want to relate with anybody. At work, you don't want to relate with your colleagues because you are just emotionally spent, And of course, it affects your physical health. When our people before colonialism knew a thing or two, they will tell you that sometimes too much thinking and this and that it affects your body. You think that they are just talking, but it does. It does, because it could make you ill when you are troubled all the time. So if I can have the next slide. And just as I'm talking, keep thinking about yourself. If you have examples, you can put it in the chat box. I keep looking at that, and I will. Please, can we have that person muted? Thank you. So what factors affected your emotional well-being? The first one is challenges at work. Because you go to work is very challenging. I worked in a place, I used to be a banker. So I worked in a bank once where I was so bullied, I was so ill-treated by my boss that whenever I woke up in the morning, my husband would say, wake up, I will hiss. When I'm having my bath, I will hiss. When I'm dressing up, I will hiss. He said, are we fighting? I will say, no, I'm just spent. I hate this place, And I had an official car, but I used to do things like getting down far away and walking to the office, so that my head will be cool by the time I get to office. Challenges with work can be extremely stressful and affect your emotional well-being to a significant degree. I was very unhappy. I even feel like when it says it affects the body, I had what you call irritable bowel syndrome. I fell ill from it. So challenges with work, with school, with relationships, or with home life. That is challenges in your day-to-day life. The second thing is changes in health. Of course, a very bad health situation is very stressful. Changes in relationships, yeah, that's very bad as well. You can imagine someone you love and the person says, I don't want to see you again. That's very hard. It's very hard. Losing retirement. Retirement. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The lights will come back in a minute. But I hope you can still see a little bit of me. Okay. So I'll keep talking. Retirement, which may affect social circles or a sense of purpose. Retirement is hard. I have many people who have retired. They don't know what to do. They're very unhappy. They wake up, they start disturbing their adult children. Or as a banker, like I said, there was a man who used to come to the bank every day, just 100 naira, 200 naira, just to go out and see other people. Thank you. That's Nigeria NEPA for you. Luckily, I think I have a solution to it. There's Rarus Izedon says, unresolved issues or experiences can also influence emotional well-being. Thank you very much. Yes, it can. Unresolved, that is the thing just keeps staying in your heart. It's not the solution. There's no solution. It's not changing. It's not correcting itself. And that's where we'll look at emotional regulating your emotions, because you've got to learn to manage such situations and regulate them. So again, a major challenge is retirement, like I said, and losing loved ones is so major. It's so major. And then moving away from home. You know, our people who jackpot, there are a lot of sad stories about some of them who've come down with serious emotional issues, mental issues even, suicide, depression, unhappiness, loneliness, and so on. So these are all factors that can affect your emotional well-being. Thank you, Ruth, for your comment. A toxic environment at work. Yes, because that's the first comment says challenges with work. You remember my example? It was a very toxic work environment. I have never worked in such a place before or after. Where even waking up in the morning and thinking you are going to that place almost runs you. Someone said unforgiving. So yeah, again, that's relationships. Somebody who just refuses to forgive you, and you apologize, you talk through it. You know, it happens. And money, of course, is always an issue. Thank you. I'll put that in, because lack of finance too can be very, very, very tough to deal with. So what emotions do these elicit? Let me ask you. When there is a challenge at work, what emotion comes to you? There is a toxic environment. You wake up, even going there, colleagues, you know, the kind of environment where you dare not even behave, you dare not let anybody know anything about you, because then there'll be gossip, there'll be backbiting, there'll be people gaslighting you and so on. What kind of emotions arise from such a situation? Someone said, yes, workplace politics. Very, very tough too. So how do you feel in such a situation? Since we are talking about emotions, can you give me a few emotions? Someone said, resign. Well, sometimes you resign. I actually had to resign from that bank I told you about, where I was so unhappy. I just had to resign. My boss said, where are you going? He said, you are going to certain poverty. I said, it's okay. Let me go. You know, heavy traffic. Of course, heavy traffic that's why people misbehave in traffic at times. Unhappiness, mental instability. We are not talking, that's a very important factor, Banji, and thank you for it, that mental instability, yes. But this is usually for people who really don't have mental instability. But when there's mental instability and you now add all these stressors on top, it becomes very, very bad. Okay, so you just feel a sense of frustration and unhappiness. For most of these situations, that is what happens. Please go on. Please go on. Can I have the next slide? Yeah. So what is the relationship? We've said it many times. So it is a critical factor in enhancing productivity within an organization. And I think schools, we are in very emotional times. We are in very emotional times. You teach a child, in my days, if my teacher disciplined me, my sister, she was rude to her teacher. So when the teacher was writing the report, he said she has a tendency to be rude and insubordinate. My sister knew she would not bring that kind of report card home. She called all her friends. About 20 of them went to kneel down and beg the teacher that she will just die. They will kill her if she takes this report home. So the teacher changed it, but he admonished her, you know. But nowadays, in fact, the parent will come and fight with you that she was never rude in my house. What did you do to her? So, excuse me. So you see that things have really changed a lot. There's a paradigm shift, there's a demographic shift, there's different ways of looking at things, and therefore, we are in the thick of it in our schools. And it affects our productivity significantly. And but the thing about it is that, and I want to tell us school leaders that we really have to manage productivity very well. Because teachers who are emotionally healthy who are happy at work, who are in a good environment, are likely to be more engaged. Therefore, they will engage your children. Are likely to be motivated to keep learning, to keep growing, to keep teaching. They are likely to be committed to the
I think she'll be back on very shortly. While we wait for her to join in, you want to put some things on the group chat, what you have learned so far? We're back on in less than 20 seconds. I'm so sorry about the breaking transmission. I think we can start putting our questions in the chat room so that when the time comes for questions and answers, we already have the questions collated for her to answer. Kindly start putting your questions in the chat room, please.
I'm back. I'm sorry. I think it was the power surge that affected us. Please continue. I've changed my device. I will try and connect on the better device again, on the bigger screen as well, so that I can see your questions well. So if I can have the next slide. I'm so sorry about that. I think you all understand, don't you?
Yes, we do. We do.
Nigeria. Oh dear. So you know what I have observed from maybe because I've done a lot of work with many schools across the length and breadth of Nigeria is that what you can see when you please next slide when you I'm talking about the next slide, yes, when you see that there's poor emotional well-being in the school, you will see that there's a lot of teacher absenteeism. I went to a school. Honestly, there was hardly any teacher in school. Someone even told me that they are offloading coke in the market. I said, what does that have to do with the school? They said all the teachers have stalls in the market. So they all just go to the market offload. I mean, they don't care about the students at all. So the students are in the compound with the security guards. Of course, it was not a private school. The children were all milling around, but the security guards refused to open the gate because they are not to go home until a certain time. Meanwhile, there was no teacher. The teachers had gone off to the market to take delivery of drinks or their various stalls. So there's teacher absenteeism. They will stop coming. They will look for other things to do. Or quiet disengagement. They won't fight. They won't do it, but they won't work. They won't work at the level you expect them to work. Of course, you have staff leaving. Remember, somebody put in the in our chat box that look, you will soon have teachers leaving you. Yeah, teachers will start leaving you, which is sad, isn't it? And then, of course, there's conflict. Every time there'll be conflict all the time. And that can be terrible because what is happening is when people are under this pressure cooker, the slightest thing, they lose control. And then you have attending to teachers, finishing quarrels in school, and like I said, backbiting, a toxic environment, which means that work is not just going to go on. And of course, there's initiative fatigue. You work in some places, you dare not recommend anything because they'll even say you are showing off. I went to teach some people somewhere, and there was one very bright young man there who was saying, let's think about this, let's think about this. Do you know people were annoyed with him? They said he's showing off. Whereas I was enjoying him because he was making the class very lively with all his comments. But that's the way it is. People have fatigue and stop giving you ideas. Stop, they live a full life outside the school and just come to school and sit. At the end of the month, let me collect my salary. That's the hidden productivity cost for all our schools. If I can have the next slide, please. Thank you. So I wanted to talk about emotional intelligence. Remember I said, first of all, are you a competent teacher? Secondly, there's something called emotional regulation. But before we talk about that, look at this slide, which shows the multiplicity of intelligence according to Goldman, stating that intelligence is though we like to say a child is clever, he's doing well in school and so on and so forth, but actually, yeah.
Just be patient with us. She'll be back very soon.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been shouting out, please unmute me. Please unmute me. Thank you. So this is the multiplicity of intelligence, showing you the various types of intelligence. There may be more. I mean, like some people argue, logical. What we are normally measure in school is verbal aptitude, logical, mathematical aptitude, and we say, oh, he's highly intelligent. The others, there's the artistic child, there's the musical child, there's the sporty child, and then the last two elements, what you call interpersonal skills and intrapersonal. Interpersonal means relating with other people, your relationship with other people, and intrapersonal means your understanding of yourself. These are the elements that make up what you call emotional intelligence, emotional quotient. And if I can have the next slide, if I can have the next slide, please, can I have the next slide? Thank you. This is the theory by Daniel Goleman. I just wanted to show the book. And what he says is that emotional intelligence predicts performance more strongly than IQ in leadership roles. Because when you are a leader, it gets to a stage you are not that technical. You are now somebody who can manage your emotions. So that is according to Daniel Goleman. So for us who are school intelligence is such a key factor, and that is why we must make it like the full clump. I'm going to open on a second device, please, which I'm not happy about, but so that it is going on and off. I'm so sorry. I think I'm in the MTN. I'm one of those people who just use MTN, but it's been very difficult these past 3 days. So remember, school leaders' emotional intelligence predicts performance more strongly than IQ in leadership role. If I can have the next slide, thank you. Thank you. You can see that I too am having to practice a degree of emotional intelligence in giving these slides because it's enough to be so angry. So I'm going to follow 2 tracks here. And but ignore my last Next. Role of the individual role. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide, can you hear me? For teachers, let's be realistic. Teachers manage serious emotional load. A lot of load. You manage all these children in the classroom, 20 to 30. And what you can imagine when they talk about government schools, I have 100 and something. You manage parent pressure. We mentioned that. You manage QA expectations. You manage behavioral complexity in the classroom. And then there's limited recovery. By the time school is over, by the time you go home, you have your life at home, the next day you start it. So there's limited recovery time. So the emotional is high. And I want, as the school leaders again, I can see school leaders that are under extremely severe pressure, and our job as and support them, protect and support our teachers because we are all in. Please, I have to remove my picture in case that is causing part of the problem. If I can have the next slide. I can have the next slide. Yes, next slide. Yeah. So if you look at components of emotional intelligence, you see at the top left, you have to be aware to understand that is self-awareness. Recognize and understand your moods, your emotions, your drivers, and the effect on other people. If you look at the bottom left, is self-management. You see, so this is really this is where we talk about emotional well-being. For you as a human being, you have to recognize your own moods. You have to recognize your triggers, the things that trigger you, that cause you to, go into this emotional spiral. You have to think before you act, because that is the number one skill in managing your emotions. Like I said, I'm going to be, you'll pardon me a bit while I try and open on a second device so that I'll be there in two places. I don't know how that will work. But the other part of emotional intelligence is social, your ability to get along with other people. That's important, but that's not what we're talking about today. We are looking at the self, that who am I and what I can do, and that is self-management. So if I cannot, so I'll try and talk about a few tips that we can give to manage your emotional intelligence, so that in all situations you don't allow the situation to overwhelm you. If I can have the next slide. And as I go along, if there are some of these things that you use yourselves, let me know. So of course we put this somewhere that what it does for you is the opposite of, I've mentioned it earlier, that it improves decision making. Even yourself as a teacher, it improves your ability to instruct your students. Of course, conflict management and team collaboration. If I can have the next slide, please. And please, maybe someone can send me a note about how much time I have left. Thank you. Now, tips number 1, be mindful. Be mindful to stay in the present moment. Be aware of what is going on internally with you. Understand yourself. One thing I always say is, because I used to teach the 7 habits of highly effective people, and it says that between the stimulus and the response, there is space. That is, between what happens to you and your reaction to it, there's time for you to think. So within that time, before you react, breathe deeply. You may think it's a minor thing, but breathe. By the time you breathe, if I were in physical class, I would have said, everybody stand up. Breathe in and out about 3 times. Do you know that you calm down because oxygen has rushed to you, gone into your brain, it has calmed you down. That trigger that is causing you to be emotionally to be reactive and so on, you given time. It says here, take a walk, go out, go away from the situation, go away from that situation. And food again, when you are eating, be careful. Eat gently, softly, so that you are paying attention. You are eating intentionally. See, all these things will calm you down. Calm you down so that you are aware of what is happening. And again, look at your body from top to toe. It may give you a headache. Your hands may be shaking. Your legs may be shaking. Learn how you manage your emotions yourself. So that's one of the first things. Be very mindful of yourself. Staying in the present moment to help you become more aware. I think this is important to me because I'm a very hot-tempered person, naturally. Very hot-tempered. But very rarely have people seen me lose my temper. That's because after a certain age, after a while, when it damaged one or two relationships, I made up my mind. Now, when people annoy me to the extent where I'm on the verge of saying something very bad, I take a deep breath. I calm down. I say things like, between the stimulus and the response, there is space. Then I say, this is not about me. This is about the situation. I start to say affirmative words to myself. If I can have the next slide, because it will improve your emotional well-being when you do that. Yes, thank you. This is from Zedman, having boundaries. That will come with, yes, you must have boundaries with people around you. I think sometimes you don't have boundaries. And when you don't have boundaries and the boundaries break down, you are unhappy. No, you must have boundaries. That is, there must be a limit beyond which people cannot go with you. It's very important. Thank you for that. And then again, try to develop a positive mindset. I had a webinar yesterday where we talked about people succession. And one of the people there said, well, somebody betrayed her, terribly stole money, almost brought down her company, and she was so unhappy, but she came back again. And when she came back, she trusted another person because what she was doing was she was traveling to buy things in another country. And she trained one of her staff and the lady was going. She didn't know the lady was stealing from her. Seriously. So she started training another person. And people said, somebody has betrayed you. You are doing this again. And she said, I cannot. I have to trust. I have to trust people who work with me. It's just that this time I will study the people better. I will not allow them to go until I have done a lot of work with them. I've studied them, I understand them. And I will also make sure that I have my own procedures because I too was lax. So where I was lax, I'll be strong. So you have to develop a positive mindset. Again, if your children have done well in class, there's nothing like enjoying them. Enjoying them, make you too, and you and I know that when you celebrate your children, even you are happy. Forgive yourself for mistakes. We all make mistakes. There are still, for me, so there are some things I still say, I wish I hadn't done that. But it's gone. Yesterday is gone. You can't come back again. So move forward. And one thing that a lot of people are doing nowadays is they keep a gratitude journal. That is, what am I happy about today? I just keep a normal journal. Like at the end of today, I'm going to write what went well, what didn't go well. I wasn't happy with the internet. Next time, what will I do? I will have 3 or 4, because right now I have 3 sources of internet, but I'm still having this problem. But then if I had 3 or 4, I'll have 5 or 6 next time. So writing that, so keeping a journal so that every day you see you are thankful for the day. I'm thankful for this moment with you because what would I have been doing otherwise, But I'm here with people who are obviously excited about education. Mr. Femi Fakoli, I love the idea of the gratitude journal. Yeah, you don't have to write a long thing. Just, thank you, Father, for this. It's enough. A gratitude journal can make you see that, I'm just unhappy for no reason. My life is actually, when I said my teacher said I should draw my life in ups and downs, she called me. She said, what a life you have had. Most of it was upward. And I used to think it was sad and downward. But no, by the time I drew it, it was actually, most of it was positive. So, and I was grateful. So it shows that you have to be, keep it up. You'll be surprised that your life will be exciting. You'll see that you've done well. That's next slide. Next slide. Oh, yeah. Healthy social connections. I knew someone years ago told me she had no friends. That person is a bad friend herself. Let me say, then no one says, less judgment on self, must allow ourselves to live life daily. Yeah, some people are too judgmental. Please manage how you judge other people. Judge not, as they say, that you do not judge. Then too high expectations can affect you, especially managing the shock. Yes, remember the lady who was betrayed. Next time, you make sure that you manage your boundaries, you manage the procedures and so on, so that they cannot cheat you the same way again. You manage your heart. They say guard your heart. I always guard my heart so that nobody in this world can make me feel very, 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 very unhappy. Of course, I love my children very much, but it doesn't mean that they have the ability to make me lose confidence in myself. So reinforce your social connections. You must have a group that you belong to. You must have, whether it's in church, whether it's at home, whether it's in the family, people you believe, who care for you, people who ask after you, and something, you must create positive relationships with them as well. Show them you care. That person who said, I have no friends, like I said, is a bad friend. Learn a lot of things. Volunteer. I told you I'm in class. I won't tell you my age, but I assure you I'm very, very close to 70. But I'm in school and I'm having a great time because I have classmates. I have very interesting classmates who find me very interesting. So I'm enjoying myself. And when you deal around young people, you try, it doesn't mean you join them in there. You can't do some of the things they do, but you've got to show them that you are, like I used to tell some of my classmates that I have, that tell me somebody who was not young once. Don't tell me all the things you are doing. Don't think that I haven't passed through it. Tell me someone who wasn't young once. I was young at a particular point in time as well. So it's fun to be with young people. So reinforce your social connections. So I can have the next slide. Please let me know how much time I have left. I want to start rounding up soon. Yes. You see there, I put avoid judging any feelings for right or wrong. Aim to become more aware of your feelings, understand your feelings, and understand your triggers as well. And, I put a lot of points there, and of course, you get the slides. You work on the person that you wish to be. And that's why journaling, maintaining relationships, connecting with your emotions, building up relationships will only make you a better teacher. We've said competence. You must be a competent teacher. You must be trained and you understand the job and you do it well. But you must manage your emotions as well, because that makes you an even better human being, an even better teacher. If I can have the next slide. If I can have the next slide, please. So leaders, there's something about this tax. Leaders to work. Teachers, we always believe that leaders, you are lucky, you are pata and all that. No, you two work under a lot of pressure. There are board expectations. Go follow your principal to a board meeting. You will pity him. I remember I had a meeting once, and when I was still in Lagos State as a commissioner, you can imagine the governor was yapping me. So when we finished, I had to tell my parents, a commissioner has a oga. Yeah, because of course there was something he wasn't happy about. Oh, I was trembling where I sat. So you see, there's still board expectations. There's the financial responsibility. It's on you. You have to manage the morale of your staff. You have to manage crises. You have to manage decisions. You're always making decisions. People are always coming to you. Can I do this? Should I do this? What is this? What is your life is so frantic and frenetic as a school leader, but you must manage your emotions. You must manage your emotions. I went for a board meeting once, and as a member of staff, and somebody said, "Did anybody at our last meeting? Did anybody attend our last meeting?" I was going to say I was there. A board member said, "Nobody." They said, but they said nobody. Oh, what a pity! But I was there. I'm nobody. Because I'm a member of staff, I was nobody to them. It was a painful, I talked to, I said, but I was there. And they said, okay, we're talking about us. So it was us versus them. So I was inconsequential. It didn't matter that I was there. I never knew that anybody could look at me like that. But it's one of these things, right? So you have to manage. So 3 more, thank you. The time is up. I didn't see that. Thank you. But just let me go to the next slide and talk about what school leaders should do. Just one or two more slides. Mr. Falakule said that was painful. It made me understand how they looked at us staff. And I was determined that by the time I'm done with them, they will know that I'm even more than them, that I'm a professional. I know my job. They don't know it. They are board members. They don't know education like I do. Next slide, please. It was painful, yeah, but it happens. So the role, you must prioritize the well-being of your staff. No matter what is happening to you with your board and so on, you can give access to counseling for your staff as well. And I've done it before as a principal, where I had somebody come, a traumatologist, come and stay with us for like a month. When she was teaching the children, one of my teachers just burst into tears. And she said, that woman is traumatized. So she started working with the teachers as well. And it was highly confidential. I don't know what she discussed with them. If there's excessive workload, you've got to look at timetabling. Some of us, like a teacher, we give the teacher 30 periods, and then another one has 10. The person who has 10 should also do other things. Maybe is involved in sports or something. But somebody works, and some don't. Some come to school to come and relax and enjoy themselves. You've got to manage your staff workload so that it's fair. And then open communication. Allow people to talk to you. Look, let me tell you, you never regret it. You never regret it if you are open in your communication. You allow people to feel valued. And I'll tell you, I always say, look at myself. I know I wasn't perfect at this thing. But what made me change was there was a 360 degree. And my secretary said, I don't care about her. I only care that she comes to work. So what did I do? I changed. I changed totally. And I cared. Good morning. How are you today? That's what she wanted from me. So thank you very much. I think it's very important that we role model and we support our staff. And remember to have you must learn that expression so that they don't see too much on your face, because your face will influence the whole school. That's the last thing I wanted to say. So because I can see my time is, I still have to say, but thank you very much. I'm so sorry I took so much. I just looked up now and saw that somebody had put some things here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adefisayo. Thank you for the very deep insights on how we can manage our emotions, deal with the pressures that we face at work. You mentioned a lot of the issues that teachers face in school: parental pressures, inspection expectations, behavior of the children, and the fact that we have such limited recovery time. Even if you give teachers 2 weeks, it's not enough to catch their breath. But in all of this, we are in this profession for a purpose. And while we remain in this profession, we need to learn to manage our emotions. We need to regulate ourselves. We need, as school leaders, we need to think about the well-being and the workload of our staff and just ensure that there's a healthy work-home balance. I've taken a lot of tips from you, and I'm sure that everyone on this call has taken a lot of tips from you as well. On the program, we have time for questions and answers after your talk, but because we are short of time, I'm going to go right into introducing the next speaker, and then we will have a collective question and answer session at the very end. Our next speaker is Mrs. Audrey Abayomi. She's a UK-based psychologist, mental health therapist. She's a coach and a corporate well-being speaker, for over 17 years. She's been supporting individuals, professionals, and organizations to strengthen their mental health, emotional resilience, and sustainable performance. Audrey specializes in mental wellness, relationships, identity, and personal growth, with particular experience working with high-functioning professionals, couples, and individuals navigating stress, burnout, trauma, teachers, and major life changes. Her work is grounded in psychological insights, compassion, and practical tools that support lasting change. With a deep commitment to emotional well-being and faith-informed care, Audrey is passionate about destigmatizing mental health while creating safe places for honest reflection and healing. Through therapy, coaching, speaking, and digital resources, she helps people move from survival to clarity, strength, and intentional living. She holds an MSc in applied psychology, a BSc in psychology, alongside multiple professional training qualifications in counseling and therapeutic practice, and is currently in the process of pursuing her PhD while working full-time in her private practice, which is called The Healing Place. As a founder of The Healing Place, she brings a rare combination of frontline clinical expertise and senior leadership experience within mental health services. She's a speaker. She specializes in delivering calm, structured, and evidence-informed sessions, which equip audiences with practical tools and reframe emotional wellness as a strategic driver of productivity and performance. She's a committed devout Christian, a wife, married for 31 years, and a mother to 4 children between the ages of 20 and 30. Audrey, we welcome you very specially. Again, like our last speaker, gave us deep insights. We're expecting to get a lot from you. Thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to share. Just let me know if you can see my slides and if you can see my slides moving.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mrs. Adefisayo. Thank you for that wonderful talk. Thank you so much for having me. It really is a privilege to be in a room with people who shape lives every day, whether in classrooms or at home. As a therapist and psychologist, I spend much of my time supporting individuals and families through stress, pressure, burnout, and transition. I'm also an author. I write guided journals focused on emotional well-being because I deeply believe in the power of reflection as a tool for growth. One thing I see consistently is this: emotions don't disappear just because we're responsible for others. In fact, the more responsibility we carry, the more important our emotional well-being becomes. Emotions aren't weaknesses, they're signals. They tell us when we're stretched, when we're overwhelmed, when something matters deeply to us. And when we learn how to understand and regulate them, we don't just feel better, we lead better, we parent better, and we teach better. So before I share my story, I want us to hold that perspective that emotional stability isn't separate from performance, it's foundational to it. So I have about 40 minutes, and I would like this to be engaging. So please keep a pen and paper nearby as I speak. If something resonates or sparks a question, please, write it down. And then, like Regina has said, we will have dedicated time for questions. If I asked you what is slowly eroding emotional performance in your school, some of you would name something big like funding, infrastructure, policy, behavior, national instability. But what if the real answer is something much smaller and much more consistent? So, for the past 5 years, I've worked in a mental health organization managing 3 mental health services in Camden, in London. I led a team of 12 staff and I was responsible for 29 individuals with high and complex mental health needs, mostly with psychosis. It was intense, it was meaningful, it required clinical judgment, emotional steadiness, and leadership every single day. On paper, I was performing well. The services were stable, targets were met, my team was supported and well supervised, and I was also well supervised.
At the same time, I was still building my private practice in the evenings. I continued my private practice in the evenings, and showing up for my private clients most evenings. And I was also writing and publishing journals. So effectively, I was working 12, 13-hour days from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., sometimes 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., and literally living for the weekends, which was equally full of tasks and chores. And for a long time, I told myself, I can sustain this, I'm okay. But somewhere around year 5, which was last year, something shifted. I didn't collapse. I didn't stop functioning. I didn't fail. I was just tired. Not just physically tired, but emotionally tired. Everything required more effort, and every decision felt heavier. At the end of the day, there was very little left of me. But what struck me most was this. From the outside, nothing looked wrong. My productivity was intact. My performance was intact. In fact, I was promoted twice. But internally, I was depleted. Now, this season taught me something critical. You can meet every target and still lose yourself in the process. And the thing is, in education, when emotional well-being declines, the impact does not stop with staff. It also reaches students. So now let's ground this in reality. Educators in Nigeria are not operating in neutral conditions. You're dealing with rising cost of living, fuel prices, long traffic jams before you even get to school, unstable electricity, as we have seen, and unstable internet, financial pressure in a largely cash-based society that doesn't give like the room to for credit or for you to sort of like get to some sort of a bridge between now and the next payday. There's national insecurity and there's distressing news cycles, and this brings about this collective trauma. So these are not occasional stressors, they're chronic and they're ongoing. So when we talk about emotional well-being in this context, we're not talking about spa days and positive thinking. We're talking about psychological stamina. Emotional well-being is the ability to remain internally steady in the presence of external instability. So emotional well-being is not about being happy all the time. It is three things. I just want to do a check. Are you able to see my slides moving?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So emotional well-being is not about being happy all the time, like I said. It's about three things: awareness, regulation, and recovery. So awareness means I know what I'm feeling and I can name my emotion correctly. So, for example, when I'm feeling irritated, not to say I'm angry, because the way you emote when you're irritated is different from the way you emote when you're angry. When you're angry and you're like really angry, it's more of an extreme emotion. But when you're irritated, there's a slightly less emotion than being like very angry. You just kind of like, you're irritated. But if you call irritation anger, then you will behave angry even though you're only irritated. So awareness means being able to label your emotion, know and understand the emotion that you're feeling. Regulation means being able to manage that emotion constructively. And recovery means I can restore capacity after stress. Like Mrs. Adefisayo said, you will be stressed. Stress is part of it. But how do you restore and get back to status quo after stress? So this is why emotional well-being must be intentional. Without structure, well-being just becomes a wish. But with structure, it becomes culture and it becomes your identity. So what does emotional well-being actually look like on an ordinary Monday morning? It looks small. It looks insignificant. So for example, it can look like a 1 minute reset, whew, in your car, like that, before entering school. take a deep breath and to reset your psyche. Like Mrs. Adefisayo said, get some oxygen into your brain. It can be lowering your voice deliberately before responding to a student. It can be pausing before you reply to a frustrating email. And it can be choosing not to carry frustration, like traffic frustration, into your very first lesson or your very first meeting. These are what we call micro regulations. But the problem is that we underestimate these small shifts because we're overwhelmed by our big problems. But this is where the 1% shift comes in. In Stephen Bartlett's book, The Diary of a CEO, highly recommended, by the way, he talks about sweating the small stuff. He uses Toyota, the company Toyota, that became globally dominant. And he talks about how their culture was to not to have any dramatic change in their workforce, but to do small, tiny improvements, tiny 1% refinements, small process adjustments, and repeated constantly over time. They became marginal gains, and they created extraordinary performances. Another highly recommended book is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he calls this principle that Toyota did the 1% principle. So it's small improvements compounded daily, and this can create a radical transformation. So while you may think that a breath feels small, take a breath, okay, what's that? It's just a small thing. Like take a pause, or a boundary feels small. But when you repeat these consistently, these 1% shifts, they change tone. And tone is what shapes climate. The tone of your room, the tone of your emotions, the tone of your classroom. Climate shapes culture, and the culture shapes the performance of both the teacher and the student. So remember, emotion affects thinking, thinking affects behavior, and behavior affects performance. When the nervous system is elevated from traffic, from financial pressure, from insecurity, thinking begins to narrow, your patience shortens, and your communication sharpens. But understand this is not weakness, it's physiology. It's what's happening in your body. But in education, students are highly sensitive to adults' emotional tone. And what has happened is that there's been research, and research in school psychology shows that teachers' emotional regulation is positively associated with student engagement and classroom climate. So when adults are regulated, the classrooms feel safer. And when the classrooms feel psychologically safer, students engage more. Teacher emotional regulation is one of the most underestimated performance skills in education. It's the ability to notice frustration, stress, or fatigue and choose a response rather than react automatically. In a classroom, the adult is often the emotional thermostat or the emotional thermometer. Students will read tone, facial expression, posture, and energy long before they process the information that you are giving to them. When teachers are emotionally regulated, classrooms feel predictable and psychologically safe. When teachers are dysregulated, even unintentionally, tension rises and engagement drops. Emotional regulation doesn't mean suppressing feelings. It means managing them in a way that protects clarity, professionalism, and student learning. So OECD 2024 data shows that teachers with higher well-being report greater self-efficacy, job satisfaction, and professional commitment. And here in the UK Teacher Wellbeing Index of 2024 also found that increased behavioral challenges negatively impact teacher well-being, especially where leadership support is weak. So these are not soft measures, they're performance predictors. And globally, we're seeing the same pattern. Emotional climate affects professional performance. So the question is not whether teachers feel pressure, because they do. The question is whether schools treat emotional regulation as a professional competency. We train teachers for curriculum delivery, assessment, safeguarding, amongst other things, but rarely do we train for emotional steadiness under pressure. And yet the data shows us clearly, when the adult in the room is steady, engagement rises, trust deepens, and performance follows. If we truly accept that emotional regulation is a professional competency, then it must be trained like one. Just as we schedule safeguarding updates, curriculum development, schools should intentionally build psychological skills training into their annual development calendar. This doesn't have to be complex. It can be structured workshops, reflective leadership sessions, or even a dedicated online training module focused on emotional regulation, stress management, and cognitive resilience in education. When leaders formalize this training, they send a powerful message. Your emotional well-being is not incidental to performance, it is foundational to it. Emotional regulation is not a personality trait. It's a leadership skill in motion, and in education, that skill multiplies. So when emotional regulation is absent, the impact does not stay at the level of individual feeling. It shows up in performance, because schools are human systems. What one adult carries emotionally does not disappear. It travels into meetings, into classrooms, and into the culture of the school. And that's where we begin to see the connection between emotional capacity and staff performance more broadly. When staff are emotionally depleted, it can look like shortened patience, reactive communication, and lower creativity. But emotional regulation looks like clearer thinking, professional communication, consistency under pressure, presence in the classroom. Emotional load affects staff performance in subtle but very powerful ways. It can show up as irritability in meetings, reduced patience with colleagues or students, and sharper communication or difficulty staying mentally present. It can manifest as emotional reactions rather than thoughtful responses, or as a quiet withdrawal where staff appear physically present, but they're cognitively fatigued. So they're there, but they're not there. That was how I was feeling. But these are not signs of incompetence. They're signs of emotional bandwidth being exceeded. When emotional load is high and recovery is low, even highly capable educators can struggle to maintain the consistency that strong schools require. So beyond breathing techniques and, setting boundaries, let me offer you maybe like 3 ways that staff can actively reduce emotional load. And I think Mrs. Adefisayo has even said a couple of them. But first of all, tighten your boundaries around cognitive spillover. That means do not carry every interaction into the next one. You can also use this for your personal life. When you have an argument with, when people say you have an argument with somebody and then you go into somewhere else and it has nothing to do with the other person, and the other person says, why are you taking out your bad mood on me, right? So that is cognitive spillover. Don't carry every interaction into the next one. Finish one meeting before entering the next classroom. Reset deliberately. Second, for the staff, or for the leaders, reduce unnecessary emotional decision making. So teachers may standardize small routines, like, for example, how you start class. Let it be the same, how you start class, because that way you're not making decisions constantly. How you respond to minor disruptions in class, let that be the same. So you're not reinventing responses under pressure. Thirdly, build micro recovery into the day. Emotional stamina is not built through endurance alone, it's built through cycles of effort and recovery. So a 2-minute walk, stepping outside, quiet reflection between lessons, mindfulness, like Mrs. Adefisaya said, eating mindfully even. These are not indulgences, these are performance protectors. Emotional load decreases when we reduce friction, when we conserve energy, and we protect our mental clarity intentionally. So let's talk about a little bit about what productivity means in schools. So this is where we need to pause and redefine productivity. Because if emotional load affects how staff think, respond, and sustain themselves, then we must ask, how are we actually defining productivity in schools? In education, productivity is not about doing more, it's about sustaining excellence. And sustainability is directly tied to emotional capacity over time. When we talk about productivity in schools, we're not simply talking about output or how many tasks are completed. Productivity in education, like I said, is about sustained capacity. It is the ability of leaders and teachers to show up with instructional presence, like to make clear and consistent decisions, to manage complexity, and to maintain emotional steadiness over time. True productivity is not intensity for a short burst. It is effectiveness that can be maintained across a term, across a year, across your career. So, which is why I often say productivity in schools equals capacity times sustainability. If capacity is high, but sustainability is low, performance will eventually decline. Sustainable productivity requires emotional stability, clarity of thinking, and regulated behavior constantly. With all this being said, I must emphasize well-being is not just an individual responsibility. Leadership sets emotional tone. When leaders are reactive, culture becomes reactive. When leaders are steady, culture stabilizes. Psychological safety, as I've mentioned, matters. Protecting planning time matters. Managing change carefully, that also matters. Acknowledging national realities, things that are happening around us, around in the world and in Nigeria. Acknowledging these realities publicly, it reduces isolation that some people will feel what, this leader doesn't understand. We can't remove all the stresses, but we can design systems that reduce unnecessary emotional overload by designing supportive systems. That means creating decision clarity, for example, so staff are not carrying uncertainty, streamlining communication, reducing bureaucracy, so people are not on constant alert, protecting planning time, so teachers can recover and prepare, and strengthening behavior and safeguarding structures so no one feels abandoned in difficult moments. It can also mean pacing change carefully, piloting, supporting implementation, and removing tasks when new initiatives are introduced, so staff don't feel crushed by constant reform. When leaders build these systems, they stabilize the emotional climate of the school, they reduce the reactivity, and they create the conditions where staff performance and student outcomes can improve the sustainability. And when those systems are built intentionally, something deeper begins to form. Over time, structure becomes atmosphere. The way decisions are made, the way people are supported, the way pressure is handled, all shape what we ultimately call school structure. School structure is not built on fear or constant pressure. It's built on school culture. It's not built on fear or constant pressure. It's built on safety, clarity, and consistency. Students thrive in environments where they feel seen, where they feel supported, and where they feel emotionally secure. When classrooms feel predictable and relationships feel respectful, cognitive energy is freed up for learning rather than survival. A strong culture also extends to staff. Teachers perform best when they feel psychologically safe, when they feel valued, and when they feel supported by leadership. In such environments, emotional well-being becomes embedded in the rhythm of the school, and performance improves not through force, but through stability. So, I would like to leave you with a couple of questions as we reflect. In the midst of national pressure, how will you protect your emotional stability so it doesn't erode your leadership or teaching presence? And what is the one structural shift your school can make or you can make that can support staff performance and student outcomes? Because you see, we can't control inflation. We can't control traffic or national instability or the internet or the electricity. But we can control the 1% shifts in how we regulate, in how we respond, and in how we lead. Because in education, it matters. When the adult is steady, the classroom is steadier. And when the classroom is steadier, learning improves. And when learning improves, futures change. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for having me. And over to you, Regina, and for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bayomi. Thank you. I'm happy to hear you say that emotional well-being is not just about being happy all the time. And when you said that we experience emotional fatigue, even when everything seems fine. So we think that we are fine, we are meeting our targets, we are strong, we are happy, but there's a lot of emotional fatigue involved. I was quite happy to see that a lot of your points, aligned with the points from Mrs. Adefisayo. You talked about regulation, you talked about awareness, you talked about recovery, you talked about, developing a positive mindset, and I'm just happy that for us teachers and leaders, we had, a lot of information to take back to our schools with. You've given us a lot of assignment, Audrey, especially for us school leaders. You said that we should intentionally have trainings on emotional development. It's not just for us to do a lot of curriculum development training. We're talking about academics and safeguarding and all of that. And most of the time, we don't prioritize, training, ourselves and our staff on emotional development. Today has just been awesome. The insights we've gotten from Mrs. Adefisayo and from you, Audrey. I think that all educators on this call, I'm sure by Monday at our management meetings, at our teachers' meetings, we're going to be talking a whole lot about emotional wellness and how we can ensure that, nothing is left behind. We talked about micro recovery sessions, which Mrs. Adefisayo also talked about. She says that we should take time out to regulate, breathe, be calm, take a walk, eat well. And I'm sure that for us educators on this call, we can develop ways in which we can have these micro recovery times, even in between the lessons. Let me not talk too much. Let me leave the floor open for members of on the floor who want to ask questions. I don't know if we already have questions in the chat room, but please, if you have questions, can you kindly, use the raise hand function, and we will ask you to unmute one after the other. Please use the raise hand function, you if you want to ask a question. Do we have questions? Yes, someone has asked, how should we professionally categorize a situation where teachers, after closing, I haven't, the message had, yes. How do we professionally categorize a situation where teachers, after closing at 3:30 p.m., proceed to private home lessons and return home as late as 10 p.m., and then consequently reporting to school the next day fatigued and visibly stressed? I am also a classroom teacher. I think, let me ask Mrs. Adefisayo to answer that question. And then Audrey, if you have more information regarding that question, please, you jump in after Mrs. Adefisayo.
Well, thank you for that question. It's you cannot tell a teacher not to do that. That's their private time, their private space. But I think every teacher should be very careful because you burn out if you are operating at such a pace. And I would say that I can't tell you not. I mean, it's usually because salary, home needs, and so on. But when you are getting home at 10, that means you are not also managing your home. So you are not managing work, you are not managing home. It's a very difficult situation to find yourself in. And I strongly would advise that you make it moderate. If you have to do it, like I said, I can't tell people not to do it. But if you have to do it, be careful about your time management, how much time you devote to it. Because what's the point earning much more and spending it on medical bills? So I would say moderate it. Again, self-regulation, regulate yourself, that kind of thing. You can't say people shouldn't do it, but just be careful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Adefisayo. Audrey, do you want to add to that?
I understand that they're precious and people need to earn more. But like Mrs. Adefisayo has so rightly said, there's no point earning so much and spending all your money, and you definitely burn out. And like the story I told you at the beginning, it's a true story. And I was working 9 to 9, sometimes finishing at 10 o'clock. There is no way that you can be useful to either the school or the person that you're teaching at the end of the day. You're going to have to draw some kind of boundaries and have to find other ways, or maybe reduce it in a way that can work for you. So instead of doing that maybe every day, maybe doing that twice a week or something like that. But you're definitely going to need to um to take it back. Otherwise, you will burn out. You will burn out. You will be physically exhausted, emotionally exhausted, and you will not be able to regulate yourself. The body needs a certain amount of sleep, and it needs REM sleep. That's called rapid eye movement sleep. And that's when you get into the deep sleep that somebody has to really wake you up to wake you up. If you're having shallow sleep, your brain is not regenerating. The oxygen levels to your brain are low, and at the end, you may think you're making more money, but you're depleting yourself in more ways than one. So, absolutely agree with Mrs. Adefisayo.
Thank you, Audrey. Someone has asked the question, is there a way teachers could be allowed to close early to create time to unwind from the emotional trauma of the day? Audrey?
I mean, it depends on the school. This is something that schools close at a certain time. So, um, you know, there's nothing more that we can really do about that because children come to school and they're supposed to be there till maybe 3:30. Um, the I think with schools and with teachers, I may be wrong, but I don't think I am. When the children are on holiday, the teachers are also on holiday. So it kind of gives them time also to take a break, take a holiday, and to reflect because most teachers close by 4. I think school closes by 4, or maybe they close by 5. But we're all working 9 to 5 jobs, and I guess it's the extra work that a lot of teachers are doing, especially in Nigeria, that causes this um, tiredness and this emotional tiredness. And I do understand why they're doing the extra work. Don't get me wrong, I do. But at the end of the day, something has to give.
Thank you, Audrey. Mr. Adefisaya, I'm going to ask you to answer this question. Someone has asked, so how should we handle a situation with no HMO, transport facilities, or medical facilities for the staff? How do we manage this situation?
Is it who is talking? Is it the school leader talking about this? Because the onus is it's even illegal for a school not to provide medical HMO for their staff. It's part of the statutory requirements of a school. So the school is not doing that. It's quite unfair. So what I think is that I don't think one should work in that kind of environment. I'm sorry. I don't think so, because then there's no protection for you whatsoever. Are they paying your insurance? What about that? If they're not paying medical, they're probably not paying your insurance. They're probably not paying your tax. And when the time comes for you to need these documents, they'll say that you find that they've just been deducting from your salary. So I think it's time to hold schools accountable. Schools should be held accountable and should be required. They are required in law to provide HMO services, honestly. But I worry about teachers a lot, that we maybe this job makes us a bit timid so that we don't ask for what we should ask for. When we get jobs, we don't ask. When we are negotiating our jobs, we don't say, look, what about insurance? What about my medical? What about, these things? Because these are things that they're supposed to provide statutorily. So I don't really understand how an institution would do that to its staff. So all of us who are leaders here, these are the things that you have to ensure that. I don't think we do enough as leaders to ensure that our teachers are happy. We think they are expendable. It's when you start looking for a good teacher that you know that teachers are not expendable. We've got to care for our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Adefisayo. I'm going to ask you another question, Mrs. Adefisayo, because you were a school leader. So as a school leader, how do you manage the after-school lesson situation and tired teachers while still trying to support their emotional well-being? I think this question is quite similar.
We answered earlier, isn't it? I think the thing about it is that in some of the schools that I've worked in, they've explicitly said it's against the rules for you to provide after-school lessons for children in the school. That is for your students.
Yes. And then someone has asked, how can we address school owners who believe in school lessons closing at 5:30 p.m. and still want teachers to resume work at 7 a.m.?
I don't know how these questions are breaking my heart. It looks like people are working under very, very difficult and unethical work conditions. I don't know. Like I said, how are we as teachers? How do we negotiate when we are getting jobs? Then when we are there, how do we hold our school leaders accountable? I think Aisen, I think I'll have to challenge you that you should also start to help school leaders, school owners know that there are some things that you've just got to do for your teachers. Because when someone closes at 5:30, doesn't get home till 9 or 10, the next morning is there by 7. How do you want the person to work? It's affecting the school as well. Their productivity is low, morale is low, absenteeism is probably very high for all sorts of reasons, medical, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, the children's productivity will be low as well. All the learning outcomes that we are hoping will be low. You cannot flog a teacher to that extent and expect high performance. So I don't know what to say about this. I think we should challenge ourselves as organizations to start to talk to ourselves as school owners and school leaders. And you just can't treat people like this. This our industry is what we are doing is it has immense ramifications, because at the end of the day you see that's why people think being a teacher is absolutely the worst thing in the world, whereas it should be the best thing. So I don't know. HMO is statutory. Somebody is asking, it's statutory. Even in a low and medium income, you will find something to suit your school fees. You'll find an HMO that will suit your income or your revenue. It is compulsory. It is something anybody. I think there's a minimum number of staff, and any school would have more than that number. Where you have to do something about health insurance and so on. I will check again, but everywhere I've worked, we've always had HMO. We've always had HMO. Even if it's not much, and maybe even if it's not, we pay as much as we can pay, but at least provide some form of service for your staff. Even if it is not statutory, don't you think it's right? Especially in this country when medical is so difficult. It's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Ms. Adefisai. I think we will take the last question now because time is fast spent. And this person is asking, so how can you help teachers who feel he is helping a child? Sorry, I think more messages have come, so I have to go back. So how can you help teachers who feel he is helping a child with an academic challenge, but rather showing aggressive behavior towards the children who needs extra attention? Should the leader sack or arrange counseling for that teacher? The question is not quite clear.
It sounds as if the teacher is showing aggressive behavior, or maybe showing impatience towards a child that's challenged, or maybe like a special needs child. For me, one of the things that I will say as well is, as leaders, we need to train our teachers more with what is going on in the world right now, especially regarding special needs and emotional, just like we're doing here. Because what is happening is that teacher is expressing frustration at the student and it's coming off as aggression, and the student that you're expressing frustration at is not going to learn anything. It's going to mirror your emotion. So the student is going to be frustrated because you're frustrated. So we do need training, especially in Nigeria. Even in the UK, where the training is robust, there's still constant training. So there has to be more investments in the schools. Like Mrs. Adefisayo is rightly outraged at some of the questions that are coming up, because there should be some things that are, or not that they should, there are things that are mandatory, like HMOs and whatever. And like she said, even morally, there should be HMOs for people to help them bridge the gap. And also, there should be training. And training these days is not as difficult as it was, where you may have to fly somebody in or bring somebody. You can do it online at a quarter of the cost, and you can get a lot of people in to come in for the training, and it will help them. Like I said in my talk, it makes the teachers feel like you care for them. It makes them feel like, you're giving them something back, because they're learning something no matter what they are learning. So with special needs, there definitely needs to be um, more training. And if a child has a speech impairment or has any kind of special needs like autism, no matter where on the spectrum the child is, or Asperger's, and if a teacher doesn't even know what this is, how is the teacher supposed to react to the child, who the teacher might just think that the child is being difficult. So before, it's the responsibility of the leaders of the school to do assessments before the child comes in. If you do not have the facility to care for a special needs child, you cannot take the child in no matter what the parent says, because what will happen is that you damage that child more than you will help that child. You have to have specially trained teachers, teachers who know what they're doing concerning special needs, and you have to have an environment that will positively impact the child. Because, for example, if you put a child with Asperger's into a whole situation with lots of people, the mental stimulation alone will make that child, regress into himself and not be able to learn. And there's no learning taking place. So, you know, training has to be done. We cannot be expecting teachers who you haven't trained to do something that you haven't trained them to do. So, like Mrs. Adefisayo says, a lot of the responsibility is on Aisen to make sure that the leaders are providing these things, and they can provide them.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Adefisayo. Thank you, Mrs. Abayomi. We have learned a lot today, and some of the key takeaways from both of you today, is the fact that we should continue to be sure of ourselves, and we should continue to be aware of ourselves. We should learn to regulate better. We should make meaning of our lives. We should develop a positive mindset. Mrs. Abayomi says maybe we should have Mrs. Adefasayo says maybe we should have like a gratitude book just to write some short things that will make us happy, or what some happy things that we have done throughout the day. We should reinforce our social interactions. We should manage our emotions. And you spoke to us school leaders, you said that, we must prioritize the well-being and workload of our staff. And we promise to do that. We promise to do our timetabling to ensure that we even out the periods for the different teachers so that no one is burdened, and that we should be intentional about training on emotional regulation. And apart from talking to teachers, apart from talking to leaders on this score, you've given a charge to us at Aisen that we should immediately have standards for all our schools. We must ensure that the well-being of the teachers of Aisen schools is important, and that we should set standards for HMOs and different things that will ensure that our teachers are happy in school. So those are the takeaways for me, takeaways for members of Aisen and everyone on this call. Once again, I want to say thank you. But before we go, I want to hand over to the president of Aisen, Dr. Anthony Adiola, who will give the closing remarks, and then we can say our goodbyes. Thank you once again, Mrs. Adefisayo and Mrs. Abayomi. Dr. Adiola, we are ready for you. Dr. Adiola, are you there? I saw you a few minutes ago.
Okay. Hello.
Yes, we
can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Distinguished guest speakers and ladies and gentlemen, we have learned a lot from this brilliant presentation this evening. And I don't know how I can explain the experience I've actually acquired. I've learned now that I have to go back to school and then entrench emotional training, emotional-based training in my school, so that the teachers, the students can also benefit. Thank you so much. As we draw the curtain on today's speaker series on emotional well-being and productivity, we are reminded that true productivity is not just about working harder, but about living and working in a healthy emotional state. When our minds are balanced, our hearts are at peace, and our relationships are strong. Excellence naturally follows. We sincerely appreciate our insightful speakers for sharing their knowledge, experiences, and practical strategies with us. Your words have inspired us to prioritize emotional wellness, not only for personal growth, but also for greater effectiveness in our working places and communities. Thank you so much. I'd like to commend the efforts of our chairperson, executive chairperson, and the team, as well as the head of Influence Group, Mrs. Jemide, for this brilliant work that we have done. Thank you so much. Let us live here committed to caring for our emotional health, supporting one another, and creating environments where people can thrive and perform at their best. Thank you all for your participation. We look forward to seeing you at our next speaker series. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abiola. We are grateful for your kind words. And once again, Mrs. Adefisayo, Mrs. Abayomi, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for the time you have spent with us. We pray that next time we call on you, you will oblige us. God bless you, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye.